Robert Duvall never sugarcoated his opinions, especially when it came to fellow actors he disliked. His disdain ran so deep that he once turned down multi-million-dollar offers to avoid sharing the screen. Some of his clashes with famous actors like John Wayne required a mediator to diffuse the tension. And when asked if he would ever work with a particular co-star again, his icy reply was unforgettable. In today's video, we reveal the 6 actors Robert Duvall hated the most and the surprising reasons behind these bitter rivalries. Watch until the end to find out the full story. Number 1. Marlon Brando. In 2022, as Hollywood marked the 50th anniversary of Francis Ford Coppola's masterpiece, The Godfather, Robert Duvall stirred up fresh debate with his candid reflections on Marlon Brando. Known for his raw authenticity and no-nonsense craft, Duvall pulled no punches when speaking about the enigmatic titan of method acting. He branded Brando an actor's enemy, a devastating label that revealed more than just a clash of personalities. To Duvall, this was no petty grudge. It was a deep philosophical divide, a resentment rooted in their time together on the set of The Godfather. While Duvall's Tom Hagen stood shoulder to shoulder with Brando's Don Vito Corleone in some of cinema's most iconic moments, behind the scenes he saw behavior that appalled him. Brando, in Duvall's eyes, wasn't a genius at work, but a destructive force. He accused him of humiliating younger actors, undermining performances, and even wrecking scenes whenever the spotlight shifted away. For Duvall, this wasn't brilliance. It was ego, pure and corrosive, eroding the very spirit of collaboration that film required. But perhaps the most revealing evidence Robert Duvall shared decades later was about Marlon Brando's infamous reliance on cue cards. According to Duvall, Brando went so far as to demand that other actors tape lines to their bodies because he refused to memorize his script. In a blunt 2022 interview with the AV Club, Duvall admitted his true thoughts on this quirk. He said it made him spontaneous. I think it was partly that, but also partly laziness. It wasn't a rumor or secondhand gossip. It was a direct accusation from one Hollywood legend aimed squarely at another. Duvall even confessed he once tried using cards himself, only to abandon the method almost immediately. If you know your lines perfectly, you can still be very spontaneous, he explained, underscoring his belief in preparation as the foundation of great acting. Brando, ever the mystery, never responded publicly to these sharp criticisms. By the time Duvall's harshest words, branding him lazy and even an enemy to actors, came out, Brando had already passed in 2004. His silence, intentional or not, left his unconventional methods as his only defense. To Duvall, though, this was never about personal dislike. It was about respect for the craft. His own philosophy, anchored in discipline, authenticity, and complete readiness, stood in direct opposition to what he saw as Brando's carelessness and disruption on set. And while he later admitted that Brando had been revolutionary in his natural style, that acknowledgement of his impact never erased the frustration and disdain over his work ethic. Number 2. Henry Hathaway. For Robert Duvall, authenticity in acting has always been sacred. Every scene, every line must be lived, not commanded. So when he stepped onto the set of the 1969 Western classic True Grit and found himself under the direction of Henry Hathaway, sparks were inevitable. This wasn't just a minor disagreement. It was a full collision of two opposing artistic worlds. Hathaway, a veteran director of the old Hollywood system, believed in authority above all else. His style was strict, commanding, and unyielding, leaving little room for the organic, method-based performance that Duvall, then a 38-year-old actor on the rise, valued so deeply. From the very beginning, the tension was unmistakable. For Duvall, Hathaway's approach wasn't just frustrating, it was suffocating. Years later, he admitted bluntly, "The director and I didn't get along. I don't get along with a lot of directors, but when it came to Hathaway, his words carried an even colder edge. Henry Hathaway, we won't talk about him." That refusal to even speak of the man revealed just how bitter the experience had been. One particular moment captured the heart of their clash. Hathaway barked a direction at him. "When I say action, tense up. Go damn you." To a deeply instinctive actor like Duvall, that kind of artificial order was unbearable. It stripped the performance of truth, reducing it to mechanical obedience. The set of True Grit quickly became a battleground of wills, an old-school disciplinarian forcing control against a young actor demanding freedom. For Duvall, the experience left a scar not because he lost the fight, but because it represented everything he believed acting should never be. Number 3. Bruce Beresford for Robert Duvall. Nothing is more infuriating than being boxed in. He doesn't mind direction, but what he cannot tolerate is the kind of overbearing control that suffocates creativity and drains the life out of a performance. Acting to him is an organic exchange, fluid, unpredictable, and alive. So when he worked with Australian filmmaker Bruce Beresford on the 1983 drama Tender Mercies, tensions were inevitable. Ironically, the role under Beresford's direction would go on to earn Duvall his only Academy Award for Best Actor. Yet behind the accolades was a stormy collaboration marked by clashing philosophies. Beresford approached the project with a precision that to Duvall felt more like micromanagement than guidance. Every gesture, every delivery seemed to be boxed in by rigid boundaries, stifling the very spontaneity that Duvall built his career upon. The friction between them wasn't explosive in the way his battles with Henry Hathaway had been, but it was no less draining. For Duvall, the process felt like pushing against the wall, struggling to inject authenticity into a performance while constantly being reined back. In the end, Tender Mercies became a critical triumph, cementing Duvall's place in cinematic history. But the lingering memory of working with Bruce Beresford was not one of triumph, but of frustration. Proof that even in victory, the battle for artistic freedom can leave scars. Number 4. David Fincher. If there's one thing Robert Duvall refuses to tolerate, it's micromanagement disguised as artistry. For him, acting is alive, something instinctive and spontaneous, not a factory line of endless repetitions. So when David Fincher rose to prominence with his reputation for obsessive precision and endless takes, Duvall didn't see brilliance, he saw suffocation. Where others hailed Fincher's meticulous style, demanding 40, 50, even 70 takes for a single moment, Duvall dismissed it outright. "That's not directing, that's torture," he once quipped. To him, this wasn't about finding truth in performance. It was about sanding it down until it was lifeless. The friction between them never exploded on set, but it came close. In the mid-90s, Duvall was quietly approached for a role in Fincher's now iconic thriller, Say 7N. Officially, he declined because of scheduling conflicts. But years later, in a rare candid moment, he admitted the real reason. "I just couldn't see myself doing the same line 60 times. Maybe I turned it down subconsciously." In that confession, the gap between two visions of cinema became clear. Fincher believed perfection was buried somewhere in relentless repetition. Duvall believed truth emerged only when actors were trusted to live in the moment. And for him, that difference was reason enough to walk away. Number 5. Stanley Kubrick. For Robert Duvall, shaped by American realism, the actor's job has always been clear: to show up prepared, grounded, and present. And it was this uncompromising belief that would eventually collide head-on with the legendary director Stanley Kubrick. Robert Duvall has always believed that great acting comes from discipline. Every word, every gesture shaped by preparation and in honesty that allows for true spontaneity. To him, the power of performance lies not in excess, but in restraint. A quiet intensity that captivates without spectacle. So when the name Stanley Kubrick comes up, a director revered for his precision, artistry, and groundbreaking vision, Duvall's response is anything but admiration. Instead, he delivers a searing critique born not from personal clashes on set, but from his observations of Kubrick's work and infamous directing style. Speaking during the Hollywood Reporter's 2010 awards round, Duvall didn't mince words. "To me, the great Stanley Kubrick was an actor's enemy," he declared, shocking the room. Then he doubled down, pointing directly to two of Kubrick's most celebrated films, The Shining and A Clockwork Orange. To Duvall, these weren't masterpieces of performance. They were the opposite. Terrible performances, he said bluntly. Maybe great movies, but terrible performances. His fellow actors, including Ryan Gosling, chuckled in disbelief, but Duvall was unshaken. His frustration centered on Kubrick's notorious method of demanding dozens or even hundreds of takes for a single moment. How does he know the difference between the first take and the 70th? Duvall asked a question that cut to the heart of his disapproval. For him, this wasn't just an efficiency. It was destructive, stripping actors of authenticity and replacing it with exhaustion. In Duvall's eyes, a true director knows exactly what they want and draws it out without torturing the performer. That's why, to him, Kubrick's brilliance as a filmmaker could never excuse what he saw as a disregard for the actor's craft. Number 6. Robert Duvall. For Robert Duvall, acting was never about imitation or grand gestures. It was about excavation. He believed in stripping a script down to its core, unearthing the quiet truth beneath the lines and delivering it with raw honesty without pretense. Awards, mystique, or transformation rituals meant little to him. What mattered was authenticity. So when the name Robert Duvall came up with reverence, Duvall didn't gush with praise. Instead, he offered a wry observation. He's good at playing Italians. Very good. On the surface, it sounded like a compliment, but underneath lay a sharp edge of dismissal. Both men had shared hallowed ground in the Godfather trilogy, yet their paths diverged. While Niro soared into legend with Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, and Goodfellas, Duvall rooted himself in subtler, less showy performances. Roles defined by restraint and internal depth. There was no envy in Duvall's tone, only skepticism. Some actors become stars, he once remarked privately. Others become craftsmen. Sometimes people confuse the two. Industry insiders noticed this quiet rift in interviews. When asked about Niro, Duvall kept his answers clipped, respectful, but far from admiring. He didn't despise Niro, he simply refused to revere him. As years passed, the distance grew. Duvall pursued character-driven projects like The Apostle, Get Low, and Broken Trail, while Niro leaned into commercial ventures from Meet the Parent sequels to broad mob comedies. There's a danger in becoming a parody of yourself, Duvall once warned, especially if you start believing your own myth. Niro, for his part, never engaged in open conflict. When asked about Duvall, he offered a measured response. Bob's a serious actor. I've always respected him. We just have different energies. But the divide ran deeper than personalities. To Duvall, acting was a trade, a blue-collar craft built on listening, silence, and presence. To Niro, it was transformation, a ritual of shaving heads, gaining weight, or perfecting accents. The world applauded those extremes. Duvall simply crossed his arms. The work isn't in the weight gain, he once said. It's in the silence. You can wear all the wigs you want, but if you're not present, it's just noise. The two men never fought, never clashed on set, just a quiet, unspoken misalignment. Two titans of the same era walking in opposite directions. In public, their civility remained intact. At award shows, it was a handshake, nothing more. Not hostility, just philosophy. For Duvall, Niro represented the very style of acting he resisted, built on mystique, transformation, and excess. For Niro, he continued his pursuit of extremes, adding to a legacy of intensity. They weren't divided by scandal, but by one stubborn question. What is great acting? To Robert Duvall, it never looked like Robert Niro, and that perhaps says it all. In the end, Duvall's legacy wasn't just his performances. It was the values he refused to betray. From calling Marlon Brando lazy to dismissing Niro's theatrical extremes to rejecting David Fincher's obsession with dozens of takes, his judgments were rooted in one thing: a sacred respect for the craft. He demanded discipline, honesty, and humility on set. The rest in his eyes was noise. So the question lingers: was Robert Duvall right to stand his ground, or was he simply too entrenched in the old ways to adapt to a changing Hollywood?